Organic and inorganic manures and their methods of application in horticultural crops. Objectives. After studying this chapter, students will be able to gain basic knowledge about organic and inorganic manures and fertilizer, understand the importance and principles of fertilizer application to horticultural crops, learn about different methods of fertilizer application, decide on the most appropriate manures and fertilizer and their suitable method of application for a given situation. Introduction. For optimum growth and production of horticultural crops, application of fertilizer is most important. Horticultural crops require nutrients for its growth and development which are absorbed through soil. In order to get maximum benefit from manures and fertilizer, they should not only be applied in proper time and in right manner, but there are many other aspects which should also be given due consideration. Different soils react differently on fertilizer application. Similarly, the N, P, K requirements of different crops are different, and even for a singular crop, the nutrient requirements are not the same at different stages of growth. Now, certain questions may arise in your mind. What are the different methods of fertilizer application? Is there a choice to practice a particular method fertilizer application? Can any chemical fertilizer be sprayed on crops? As we learnt about essential plant nutrients, their deficiency symptoms and various types of manures and fertilizer in chapter 5, let's revise it. There are 17 elements which are essential for plants, namely carbon, C, hydrogen, H, oxygen, O, nitrogen, N, phosphorus, P, potassium, K, calcium, Ca, magnesium, Mg, sulfur, S, iron, Fe, manganese, Mn, zinc, copper, Cu, molybdenum, Mo, chlorine, Cl, boron, B, and nickel, Ni. Manures and fertilizer are major nutrient supplying sources to plants. In this chapter we will learn about various methods of fertilizer application employed for optimum growth and yield of horticultural crops. A deficiency of any of these nutrient elements can limit plant growth and development and, ultimately, yield. Most soils contain sufficient amounts of the micronutrients needed to support. Chapter 6 CHAPTER 6. 67. Plant growth. However, soils may be lacking in some of the macronutrients, particularly nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. Therefore, it becomes necessary to ensure the presence of all the essential elements supplied by the soil in the right quantities and the right chemical forms for plant use. This is done by supplying organic matter and by the judicious use of fertilizer and manures in order to supplement the nutrients required by the plants from soil to increase crop yield viz to maintain, improve the soil fertility. Continuous cropping and several other factors necessitate the use of manures and fertilizer. The dose, method and time of application depend on crop, soil, fertilizer, manure and climatic factors of the region. Inorganic and organic manures. Inorganic manures, these are industrially manufactured chemicals containing higher nutrient content than organic manures, while fertilizer grade refers to the guaranteed minimum percentage of N, P, 2O, 5 and K. 2O contained in the fertilizer material. Composition of different fertilizer commonly used in horticultural crop production is given in table 1. Nutrient input is lost either through leaching, runoff, volatilization, fixation by soil or consumption by weeds, etc. Coated fertilizer namely, urea supergranules, tar-coated urea and sulfur-coated urea make nutrients available slowly and prevent wastage. Use of nitrification inhibitors can also be an approach for increasing the nitrogen use efficiency. In India, fertilizer consumed are of 5 types. 1. Nitrogenous fertilizer 2. Phosphatic fertilizer 3. Potassic fertilizer 4. Complex fertilizer 5. Fertilizer mixtures 1. Nitrogenous fertilizer. These fertilizers supply nitrogen. The common nitrogenous fertilizer are ammonium sulfate, calcium ammonium nitrate and urea etc. Ammonium sulfate and urea are by far the most important nitrogenous fertilizer used by Indian farmers. 2. Phosphatic fertilizer. These fertilizers are chemical substances that contain nutrient phosphorus in absorbable form. The primary material of phosphatic fertilizer is rock phosphate. The commonly used phosphatic fertilizer are single superphosphate, 16% P2O5, 20% calcium and 12% sulfur, dicalcium phosphate, 32 to 36% P. 20. 5. Triple superphosphate, 46 to 48% P. 20. 5. Any natural or manufactured material, dry or liquid added to soil in order to supply one or more plant nutrients other than lime or gypsum is known as fertilizer. 68. Bone meals have been used as manures for time immemorial. Bone meals are of two kinds, I. Raw bone meal and E. Steamed bone meal. Raw bone meal contains about 25% P. 20. 5 and 4% N which is in the slow-acting organic form. Steamed bone meal contains 25 to 30% total phosphorus P. 20. 5 and about 1 to 2% N. It contains about 25% citrate-soluble phosphorus P. 20. 5. Steam bone meal is applied to soil few days before sowing of crop. Basic slag. It is a byproduct of the steel industry where the original iron ores contain appreciable amounts of phosphorus. It is a grayish black powder with a very high specific gravity. It contains 8 to 12% P. 20. 5. 3. Potassic fertilizer. These fertilizers are applied to soil to supply the plant with potassium K, one of the essential elements for plant growth. Mean potassic fertilizer used today are muriate of potash 60% K. 2O sulfate of potash 48 to 52% K. 2O. 4. Complex fertilizer. Straight fertilizer versus complex fertilizer. Straight fertilizer supply only one of the primary fertilizer elements, either N or P or K for plant growth, e.g., urea. Complex fertilizer supply more than one fertilizer elements needed for crop growth. When they supply any of the two of the fertilizer elements needed for plant growth, they are called incomplete fertilizer, e.g. monoammonium phosphate 11.0% N and 48.0% P. 20. 5 and diammonium phosphate 21% N and 52% P. 20. 5. When they supply all the three fertilizer elements for crop growth, they are called complete complex fertilizer, e.g., nitrophosphate 15% N, 15% P. 20. 5 and 15% K. 2O. 5. Mixed fertilizer. A mixed fertilizer means a mixture of more straight fertilizer, e.g., ammonium sulfate and single superphosphate may be thoroughly mixed to get a mixed fertilizer. Advantages of mixed fertilizer. Two or more fertilizer elements are added together to make a mixed fertilizer to be applied in the field. Less laborers, therefore, required for application of a mixed fertilizer. Fertilizer elements can be more uniformly applied to the field especially when they are required in small quantities. Mixed fertilizer can easily be drilled because of good physical condition. 69. Disadvantages of mixed fertilizer. The use of mixed fertilizer does not permit the use of single nutrient which may be required by the crop at a certain stage. The illiterate farmers cannot effectively control the quantity of plant food nutrients present in the mixture. Types of mixed fertilizer. Mixed fertilizer are of two types, I. Open formula mixture and E. Closed formula mixture. In open formula mixed fertilizer, manufacturer discloses the name and quantities of the straight fertilizer that are constituents of the mixed fertilizer, whereas in closed formula mixed fertilizer, firm does not disclose the constituents of the fertilizer. Sulfur containing fertilizer. These are the chemical substances containing the nutrient S in the nutrient form of absorbable sulfate anions S04-2. The important S containing water-soluble fertilizer are ammonium sulfate 24% S, potassium sulfate 18% S, ammonium sulfate nitrate 15% S, and superphosphate 12% S. Micronutrient fertilizer. Iron fertilizer. These are generally water-soluble substances predominantly sprayed as foliar nutrients on the crops. Plants absorb iron in the form of Fe2. Commonly used iron fertilizer are ferrous sulfate Fes0. 4. 7H. 20 contains 20% Fe, water-soluble. Manganese fertilizer. Manganese sulfate MnS0. 4. 4H. 20 is pink salt containing 24% Mn, suitable for foliar application. Zinc fertilizer. Zinc sulfate ZnS0. 47H. 20 is water-soluble salt whitish in color containing 23% zinc. It can be applied as foliar or in soil. Boron fertilizer. Borax Na. 2B0. 4. 10H. 2O is water-soluble white salt which can be applied as soil dressing, foliar spray. It contains 11% boron. Other micronutrients like copper and molybdenum are supplied through copper sulfate and sodium molybdate, respectively. 70. Table 1. Composition of common inorganic manures. Fertilizer. Composition percent. N. P. 2O. 5. K. 2O. Miscellaneous. Anhydrous ammonia. 82. Ammonium sulfate. 20.6. Calcium ammonium nitrate 25. Urea. 46. Single superphosphate. Dash. 16. 12S. Diammonium phosphate. 16 and 18. 48 and 46. Rock phosphate. 20 to 40. Muriate of potash. 60. Ferrous sulfate. 19 Fe. Borax. 11B. Boric acid. 17B. Manganese sulfate. 26 Mn. Basic zinc sulfate. 55 zinc. Copper sulfate. 21 Cu. Organic manures. These are plant and animal wastes that are used as nutrients after decomposition. Plants are directly or indirectly the source of recyclable materials. They provide various types of crop residues. When crushed, seeds of oil crops leave behind oil cakes. Biomass of several uncultivated plants is also recyclable. Human and animal wastes are largely the residues of plant products ingested either by humans or by domesticated animals. Organic manures and leguminous green manures are most valuable from crop nutrition point of view, whereas farmyard manure, crop residues and composts are most important from utilization and organic recycling point of view. Organic resources reduce the mining of soil nutrients and improve soil productivity by improving soil tilth, aeration, water holding capacity and activity of microorganisms. Organic manures are classified into bulky organic manures and concentrated organic manures depending on the nutrient content in them. Nutrient content of commonly used organic manures have been given in table 2. Bulky organic manures. Farmyard manure, the decomposed mixture of dung and urine of farm animals along with litter and leftover materials from roughages or fodder fed to cattle as farmyard manure. 71. Quality of farmyard manure can be improved by concentrated feeds given to the cattle. Cotton seed cake, linseed meal, wheat bran, grain husk, ground nut cake etc. are rich in N, P, Mg, and S. Compost. Composting is a process in which both aerobic and anaerobic microorganisms decompose organic matter under medium to high temperature and low carbon nitrogen ratio of refuse. Farm compost is mass of rotted organic matter made from farm waste like sugarcane trash, paddy straw, weeds and other plants, while town compost is mass of rotted organic matter made from town refuses like night soil, street sweepings and dustbin refuse. Sewage and sludge. In modern system of sanitation adopted in cities, water is used for removal of human excreta and other wastes, called as sewage. Solid portion is sludge while the liquid portion is sewage water. Both sludge and sewage water are separated and given preliminary fermentation and oxidation treatments to reduce bacterial contamination and offensive smell and also to narrow down the C/N ratio. Vermicompost. It is the compost prepared with the help of earthworms. Earthworms consume large quantities of organic matter, excrete soil as casts which have several plant growth promoters, enzymes rich in plant nutrients, beneficial bacteria and mycorrhizae. Vermicompost is a rich mixture of major and minor plant nutrients. It increases total microbial population of nitrogen-fixing bacteria, actinomycetes and symbiotic association of mycorrhiza on plant root system. Earthworm casts harbor a large number of vesicular arbuscular mycorrhizal (VAM) propagules which survive for about 11 months. Increased microbial activity improves soil phosphorus and nitrogen availability. It also improves by using residues as surface mulches. Concentrated organic manures. Oil cakes. Oil cakes can be grouped into edible oil cakes which are suitable for cattle feeding and non-edible oil cakes which are unfit for cattle consumption. Blood meal. An adult cattle gives about 13.6 kg blood meal and goat or sheep about 1.36 kg. It is effective for all horticultural crops and all types of soils. Meat meal. The meat is converted into meat meal. It is quick acting and suitable for all types of horticultural crops and soils. Fish meal. Non-edible fish carcasses and fish offal are used to prepare fish meal. These are crushed and powdered before use. 72. Table 2. Nutrient content of organic manures. Organic manures. N%, P2O5%, K2O%. Poultry manure. 3.03, 0.63, 1.40. Farmyard manure. 0.75, 0.20, 0.50. Vermicompost. 3.00, 1.00, 1.50. Neem cake. 5.22, 1.08, 1.48. Biofertilizer. These are inputs containing microorganisms capable of mobilizing nutritive elements from non-usable form to usable form through biological processes. They are less expensive, eco-friendly and sustainable and do not require non-renewable source of energy during their production. They improve plant growth and fruit quality by producing plant hormones. They increase the sustainability of soil and make it more productive. They are also useful as biocontrol agents since they control many plant pathogens and harmful microorganisms. Some of the beneficial microorganisms are capable of fixing atmospheric nitrogen, while some can increase the availability of N and P. Different biofertilizer available for use for horticultural crops are given in Table 3. Table 3. Biofertilizers commonly used for horticultural crops. Biofertilizer. Organisms. Fixed nutrient. Saprophytes. Aspergillus, Trichoderma. Decomposes organic matter at a faster rate. Legume inoculants. Rhizobium species. Fixes atmospheric N in association with leguminous crops. In association with plants Azospirillum. High N fixation capacity. Free living organism Azotobacter. Fixes N in neutral to alkaline soils. Phosphorus solubilizers. Pseudomonas striata. P. bacillus polymixa. Aspergillus avamorian penicillium digitatum. Endotrophic mycorrhizae glomus, gigaspore. Higher N, P, K, Ca and Mg, VAM. 73. Integrated nutrient management. It is the use of chemical fertilizer, organic manures, slow-releasing fertilizer, nitrification inhibitors, vesicular arbuscular mycorrhizae and nutrient-efficient rootstocks either singly or in combination, all at a time in a definite sequence during the growth developmental stages of plant for economic and efficient use of nutrients without having any adverse effects on soil health and environment. Principles of fertilizer application. The basic principle of fertilizer application is to make the nutrients readily available to the plants as per their requirement without much wastage and harmful effects on soil. Usually larger quantities of fertilizer are added to clay soils at longer intervals than to sandy soils because clay soils are richer in humus than sandy soils, and both clay and humus have a high capacity to retain nutrient ions by a phenomenon called base exchange. These adsorbed nutrient ions are not lost by leaching, can be gradually taken up by the plant roots. If a heavy dose of water-soluble fertilizer is applied to sandy soils, most of it will be leached down by high rainfall in the humid regions. Difference between manures and fertilizer. SL. No. Characteristics. Manures. Fertilizer 1. Origin. Plant, animal, human residue chemically manufactured 2. Type. Natural product. Artificial product 3. Nutrient content. Low, less concentrated. High, more concentrated 4. Availability of. Slow releasing. May or may not be readily nutrient available. 5. Effect on soil. Improves physical property, do not improves physical health of soil. Property of soil. Quantities of fertilizer to be applied. Different crops require different quantities of nutrients. Fertilizer dose is calculated on the basis of requirement of plants for its various physiological activities. While applying fertilizer, nutritional status of soil is taken into account. After deducting contribution of soil, rest amount is replenished externally by the application of fertilizer. Time of application of fertilizer. Generally, the manures are applied in the field before the onset of monsoon. With the appearance of rain, the manures are decomposed well and their nutrients become readily available. 74. To plants. The fertilizer are applied at the time of active growth of plants so that the nutrients may be absorbed by the roots. Generally, the plants remain active during February, March and July and new growth emerges on the plant. During these times, fertilizer must be applied. In case of bearing plants, the manures and fertilizer are applied to cope with nutritional requirement. Under such circumstances, the manures and fertilizer must be applied 1 month before the commencement of flowering in plants. Phosphatic fertilizer being less soluble should be applied about 20 days before the commencement of new growth. Nitrogenous fertilizer being highly soluble and hence prone to leaching losses should be applied in split doses. Half of the recommended dose of nitrogen should be given before commencement of flowering and rest half dose is given after fruit set. This holds true especially in case of fruits. In case of vegetables, the recommended doses of fertilizer are applied at the time of sowing, transplanting and also during growing. Nitrogenous fertilizer are given in splits to support production. Methods of application. For maximized efficiency, fertilizer should be applied in root zones of the plants. The methods by which fertilizer can be applied are discussed as under. 1. Broadcasting. It refers to spreading fertilizer uniformly all over the field. Suitable for crops with dense stand, the plant roots permeate the whole volume of the soil. Large doses of fertilizer are applied and insoluble phosphatic fertilizer such as rock phosphate are used. Broadcasting of fertilizer is of two types. I. Broadcasting at sowing or planting. Basal application. The main objectives of broadcasting the fertilizer at sowing time are to uniformly distribute the fertilizer over the entire field and to mix it with soil. Advantages. Fast and economical. Disadvantages. High nutrient losses, low uniformity. P efficiency is only 1/3 to 1/4 that of banding. 75. E. Top dressing. It is the broadcasting of fertilizer, particularly nitrogenous fertilizer, in closely sown crops like paddy and wheat, with the objective of supplying nitrogen in readily available form to growing plants. Disadvantages of broadcasting. The main disadvantages of application of fertilizer through broadcasting are: I. Nutrients cannot be fully utilized by plant roots as they move laterally over long distances. E. The weed growth is stimulated all over the field. E. Nutrients are fixed in the soil as they come in contact with a large mass of soil. 2. Placement. It refers to the placement of fertilizer in soil at a specific place with or without reference to the position of the seed. Placement of fertilizer is normally recommended when the quantity of fertilizer to apply is small, development of the root system is poor, soil has a low level of fertility, and to apply phosphatic and potassic fertilizer. The most common methods of placement are as follows. I. Plow sole placement. In this method, fertilizer is placed at the bottom of the plow furrow in a continuous band during the process of plowing. Every band is covered as the next furrow is turned. This method is suitable for areas where soil becomes quite dry up to a few cm below the soil surface and soils having a heavy clay pan just below the plow sole layer. E. Deep placement. It is the placement of ammoniacal nitrogenous fertilizer in the reduction zone of soil, particularly in paddy fields, where ammoniacal nitrogen remains available to the crop. This method ensures better distribution of fertilizer in the root zone soil and prevents loss of nutrients by runoff. E. Localized placement. It refers to the application of fertilizer into the soil close to the seed or plant in order to supply the nutrients in adequate amounts to the roots of growing plants. The common methods to place fertilizer close to the seed or plant are as follows. Drilling. In this method, the fertilizer is applied at the time of sowing by means of a seed cum fertilizer drill. This places fertilizer and the seed in the same row but at different depths. Although this method has been found suitable for the application of phosphatic and potassic fertilizer in cereal crops, but sometimes. 76. Germination of seeds and young plants may get damaged due to higher concentration of soluble salts. B. Side dressing. It refers to the spread of fertilizer in between the rows and around the plants. The common methods of side dressing are: I. Placement of nitrogenous fertilizer by hand in between the rows of crops like maize, sugarcane, cotton etc. to apply additional doses of nitrogen to the growing crops, and E. Placement of fertilizer around the trees like mango, apple, grapes, papaya etc. 3. Band placement. It refers to the placement of fertilizer in bands. Band placement is of two types. I. Hill placement. It is practiced for the application of fertilizer in orchards. In this method, fertilizer are placed close to the plant in bands on one or both sides of the plant. The length and depth of the band varies with the nature of the crop. E. Row placement. When the crops like sugarcane, potato, maize, cereals etc. are sown close together in rows, the fertilizer is applied in continuous bands on one or both sides of the row, which is known as row placement. 4. Pellet application. It refers to the placement of nitrogenous fertilizer in the form of pellets 2.5 to 5 cm deep between the rows of the paddy crop. The fertilizer is mixed with the soil in the ratio of 1:10 and made small pellets of convenient size to deposit in the mud of paddy fields. Advantages of placement of fertilizer. The main advantages are as follows. I. When the fertilizer is placed, there is minimum contact between the soil and the fertilizer, and thus fixation of nutrients is greatly reduced. E. The weeds all over the field cannot make use of the fertilizer. E. Residual response of fertilizer is usually higher. Row placement. Seed cum fertilizer drill is an implement used to sow the seed in rows as well as to apply the fertilizer at the same time. 77. IB. Utilization of fertilizer by the plants is higher. B. Loss of nitrogen by leaching is reduced. B. Being immobile, phosphates are better utilized when placed. The common methods of applying liquid fertilizer are as follows. 1. Starter solutions. It refers to the application of solution of N, P, 2O, 5 and K. 2O in the ratio of 1, 2, 1 and 1, 1, 2 to young plants at the time of transplanting, particularly for vegetables. Starter solution helps in rapid establishment and quick growth of seedlings. The disadvantages of starter solutions are I. Extra labor is required, and E. The fixation of phosphate is higher. 2. Foliar application. It refers to the spraying of fertilizer solutions containing one or more nutrients on the foliage of growing plants. Several nutrient elements are readily absorbed by leaves when they are dissolved in water and sprayed on them. The concentration of the spray solution has to be controlled, otherwise serious damage may result due to scorching of the leaves. Foliar application is effective for the application of minor nutrients like iron, copper, boron, zinc and manganese. Sometimes insecticides are also applied along with fertilizer. 3. Application through irrigation water. Fertigation. It refers to the application of water-soluble fertilizer through irrigation water. The nutrients are thus carried into the soil in solution. Can any chemical fertilizer be sprayed on crops? Only those fertilizers that do not scorch, burn, leaves are sprayed. Usually micronutrients, which are required in low rates, are foliar sprayed. Urea sprays are used for supplying nitrogen. 78. 4. Injection into soil. Liquid fertilizer for injection into the soil may be of either pressure or non-pressure types. Non-pressure solutions may be applied either on the surface or in furrows without appreciable loss of plant nutrients under most conditions. Anhydrous ammonia must be placed in narrow furrows at a depth of 12 to 15 cm and covered immediately to prevent loss of ammonia. 5. Aerial application. In areas where ground application is not practicable, the fertilizer solutions are applied by aircraft, particularly in hilly areas, in forest lands, in grasslands or in sugarcane fields etc. Precautions in fertilizer use. It is better to get the soil tested from soil testing laboratory. The amount of fertilizer should be calculated based on soil test for balanced use of nutrients. Secondary nutrients like sulfur should be used either alone or through sulfur-bearing fertilizer. In acid soils, calcium and magnesium should be maintained at the optimum level. Micronutrients should be applied whenever necessary. In acidic soils, boron and molybdenum, and in alkaline soils, iron, zinc and manganese should be made available. Phosphate-rich calcareous soils may show zinc deficiency problems. Fertilizer should be selected on the basis of soil characteristic. Avoid acid fertilizer in acid soils and basic fertilizer in alkaline soils. Improve soil structure through the addition of organic manure and gypsum. Black and alluvial soils should be deep plowed. Use of high-yielding varieties, irrigation at an appropriate time and amounts, removal of weeds, spacing in plant population etc. should be given due consideration. Activity